Welcome to Evil Done Badly, the worst true crime podcast in the history of the world. We've got a special treat for you this week. We've got a guest host, and he's just as annoying as I am. Please welcome Ronnie from down the hall to the podcast. How are you doing, Ronnie?
I didn't agree to this.
So, what made you want to be a guest on my podcast?
I thought we were going outside.
No, we're going to talk about some true crime on the internet.
That's stupid. I'm going outside to catch Pokemon. I heard there's a Snorlax down by the playground. Later.
You better not let the cops see you hanging around the playground. You know what happened last time. Well, I guess we don't have a guest host this week. I'll have to annoy you by myself, like I always do. This week, we're delving into the world of sports. Sort of. To bring you a tale of delusion, murder, suicide, and numerous smacks to the head. This week, we will be covering the tragic tale of professional wrestler Chris Benoit. It's pronounced like that because he's French. It sounds like the balls. And this story is bound to turn you on. Fuck. Can't believe I just said that. Holy crap. Who writes this garbage? Make no wonder no one listens to this podcast. So, before we get into Benoit and his balls, grab a beverage, hold on to your arse, and it's time for the theme song. This week's episode of Evil Done Badly is brought to you by Dick Busy and his hit song, Be Fucking Happy. Have a listen.
Who gives a shit? Be fucking happy. So your wife's a whore, banging all your friends and more. Who gives a shit? Be fucking happy. So now you got a rash from your crotch down to your ass. Who gives a shit? Be fucking happy. Quit your whining, quit your pissing, quit your moaning, quit your bitching. Make it snappy. Be fucking happy.
You can check out Be Fucking Happy on all major streaming services. And if you would like to be more fucking happy than you already are, please join up to the Wide World of Paranormal Investigations group on Facebook. They've got lots and lots of members, and you're bound to find something interesting in there. Now, back to the show. Chris Benoit was born on May 21st, 1967 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. He grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, but kept his French-sounding name. He idolized the wrestling stars Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart, and decided when he was 12 that it seemed like a cool way to make a living. As luck would have it, a world-famous wrestling school was located only a few hours away in Calgary, known as the Hart Dungeon. This was a mansion wherein the basement was used to train professional wrestlers and was the home of Stu Hart, father of enormously successful wrestlers Bret and Owen Hart. Now, I've lived in Canada my whole life, and I've always assumed professional wrestling came from the United States and a little bit from Russia. But I might have got that from Street Fighter. That may not be accurate, so that shows what I know. I'm incompetent. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of professional wrestling, but I was really into it when I was a kid. I had the Hulk Hogan weight set and everything. Those 3-pound dumbbells were heavy as fuck. I was really into it until I found out that they were just pretending to kick the shit out of each other. Once I realized that they knew who was going to win before it even started, it just totally killed it for me. I could not get into it anymore. I was way too autistic to enjoy it. And that was it. I was done. Even so, I've always thought that the Ultimate Warrior was totally badass. That guy was huge. And Doink the Clown, fucking awesome. So, was Chris Benoit any good? Oh yeah, brother! Chris was quite the accomplished performer. He did 4 years in the Canadian Stampede Wrestling promotion and won a few title matches, beating the crap out of a guy named Johnny Smith over and over again. Stampede Wrestling closed up shop in 1989, and Chris flew off to be part of the New Japan Pro Wrestling promotion. He spent a year in Japan practicing before he was allowed to have a real match. He was made to do push-ups, sweep the floor, paint fences, and catch flies with chopsticks. So he fought there for 3 years under his real name before the Japanese made him wear a mask and started calling him the Pegasus Kid. I guess that was a bit snazzier. While he was there, he won his first major championship, the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. I have no idea what IWGP stands for, and I don't care to Google it. My best guess is it's the International Workshop of Gnomish Pedophiles. Sounds reasonable, don't it? He would spend the next 10 years winning and losing championships in Japan, while making occasional trips to Europe and Mexico to win and lose different European and Mexican championships. He's damn good at winning pretend championships. Now, some of these matches lasted in excess of 40 fucking minutes. Pretend fighting or not, these guys are fucking elite pretend athletes. Tom Brady couldn't do that, and from what I'm told, he's a real athlete. He's pretty unlikable, but he's a real athlete nonetheless. Now, Chris spent a year or so in World Championship Wrestling, or WCW, and did not get himself a belt there. He tagged up with a guy named Biff Wellington. Fuck. Is that ever clever? It's not very tough sounding, but Jesus, is that ever catchy. Biff Wellington. And they pretended to get beat by another couple of dudes before heading back to Japan. He would remain a popular draw and have no problem finding promotions to put him in the ring. He earned the nickname Crippler in the Extreme Championship Wrestling promotion and proceeded to accidentally break another wrestler's neck. Oddly enough, they decided to keep going with the Crippler name, no matter in how poor taste it sounded, given the circumstances with the broken neck and all. But this name would eventually be expanded to the not quite as catchy Canadian Crippler Chris Benoit name. Yep, that's a mouthful. He returned to the WCW in 1995 and was brought on to help Ric Flair, torment Hulk Hogan, and Macho Man Randy Savage. During this stint, he was told to pretend to be having an affair with another wrestler's real-life wife. They were forced to hold hands in public and share hotel rooms in order to keep the charade going for the sake of the storyline. Let's see here. Nothing bad can come out of that. I don't think. Well, something came out of Benoit, all right. And before they knew it, Chris was having a real affair with the other guy's spouse. It made things a little tense backstage. Benoit would then go on to win a vacant heavyweight title in the WCW before jumping ship in 2000 to the World Wrestling Federation, now known as the WWE or World Wrestling Entertainment. He spent the next 7 years being quite prolific in winning titles, and along the way he got accused of cheating. I love how they act like you can be caught cheating at a pretend sport. It's really fantastic. You've really got to be able to suspend your disbelief and give yourself over to the silliness in order to truly enjoy it. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons for rednecks. Now, I'm not judging here. If you're able to immerse yourself into this universe and have a good time while you're at it, fucking go for it. I dig it. Chris Benoit was wrestling with ECW in 2007 and won a match with Elijah Burke on June 19th. This match was to determine who would be getting a shot at the vacant ECW World Championship on a June 24th pay-per-view. He was wrestling a lot. He spent a good percentage of his time smacking into people and delivering flying headbutts. In between these two matches, Chris was scheduled to do some house shows over the weekend. Chris would miss these weekend shows because, according to him, his wife and son had food poisoning and were vomiting up blood. He said he did plan on making it to the pay-per-view, though, which would be on the 24th. Benoit would, however, not make it to that match and would never wrestle again, unfortunately. As prolific and famous as Benoit was, his home life was not exactly idyllic. He was known to break furniture, and his wife had filed for divorce in 2003. She filed citing domestic abuse, but later unfiled for divorce, and they were still living together in 2007. Chris was believed to have struggled with alcoholism for years, not to mention his rampant steroid abuse. He was on testosterone replacement therapy and became increasingly paranoid that he was being stalked. He would switch cars and take different routes to places he always went in order to escape from whoever he thought was chasing him. He wouldn't allow his son to play outside or his wife to go out after dark because of these stalkers. It's thought that Chris may have been experiencing late-onset schizophrenia, but that was just a theory. This chemical imbalance was only part of the problem. You can only do so many flying headbutts and take so many chairs to the back of the head before your brain molecules fail to put themselves back together properly. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out that Chris here may no longer be playing with a full deck. Between the steroids, alcohol, and repeated pretend beatings, it seems he might have a little chronic traumatic encephalopathy going on here, otherwise known as CTE, which is much easier to pronounce. So, Chris becomes more and more unstable, and on June 25th, it would soon become abundantly clear why Benoit was unable to make it to his scheduled wrestling shows. The WWE called the police to request a welfare check when Benoit was acting weird and didn't show up to his matches over the weekend. The WWE was notified around 4:15 in the afternoon that what the authorities found at the Benoit household was ruled a major crime scene. Over the span of 3 days, from June 22nd to 24th, 3 lives had ended needlessly. Upon investigation, it appeared that Chris's wife, Nancy, was bound at the hands and feet, gagged, and strangled by Chris. Benoit had kneeled on her back and choked her with a cord from behind. She was found wrapped in a blanket with a Bible beside her. And Chris's youngest son, Daniel, who was 7 years old at the time, was found suffocated in his room with a Bible placed next to him as well. Fortunately, it seems that Daniel was drugged with Xanax and was probably unconscious when he was killed. Benoit would then spend the better part of 2 days calling and texting co-workers telling them about how sick Nancy and Daniel were. At one point, he was sending texts in the middle of the night telling co-workers his home address and that his dogs were in the enclosed pool area. He said that the side door to the garage was left open in case someone wanted to come by and check on the dogs. Now, these are some unsettling messages. The people getting them must have been pretty freaked out when they woke up the next day wondering why Chris couldn't be bothered to take care of his own dogs. Chris was concerned about getting someone to look after his dogs because he was planning on hanging himself from his lap machine in the basement and would be unable to tend to them. He removed the pull-down bar, weaved the cable into a noose, released the weight stack, lifted himself off the ground by the neck, and that's where he was found. That's 3 lives lost, and no justification for any of them. Before the facts of the case were revealed, the WWE decided to air a 3-hour special memorial episode honoring Benoit in place of their regularly scheduled barbaric nonsense. And I say that lovingly. I'm not judging. When the story broke, the next night, WWE Chairman Vince McMahon had to explain to his viewers that all mentions of Chris Benoit and his accomplishments would be scrubbed from the annals of wrestling history, and that he would be scrubbed from the orals of wrestling history as well, and no further mention of Chris Benoit was to be uttered on the show. Originally, it was thought that Chris was probably experiencing roid rage when he committed the murders, but this is debated as his killings seemed way too deliberate and planned for him to have just flown off the handle and killed his family. In the toxicology report, Chris had a couple of drugs in his system, but the only notable thing was that he had elevated levels of testosterone. That's because his balls had shrunk from the years of steroid abuse, so I mean that's reasonable. Obviously, testosterone makes you aggressive, but people don't usually flip out and kill their families when they're on it. See, I've got fuck all testosterone, and I threaten to kill my family all the time. So that theory goes right out the window. My family is not the slightest bit afraid of me, and my children could kick my ass with their eyes closed for fuck's sakes. So, I don't blame the testosterone. Chris Benoit was 40 years old when he died. After his death, the brain people took his brain out and had a look at it. Chris had suffered so many concussions over the years that he had the 40-year-old brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. It is widely assumed nowadays that this traumatic dementia played a major part in why Chris went bonkers. It's common amongst athletes who are subjected to continuous head injuries. It's estimated that at least 90% of NFL players suffer from at least some degree of CTE. Now, that's a terrible statistic, and it's probably not going to stop anytime soon. There's way too much money to be made. Rich people, who don't actually have to endure this punishment themselves, would rather sweep it under a wet rug than stop endangering the players. It's not going to go away. So, watch out for your noggins, kids. And on that note, I'm going to give your suffering noggin a rest and stop talking. And there you have it. Another episode of Evil Done Badly is in the books. I hope you like this terrible telling of the dreadful story of the Benoit family murders. It's very depressing, so go do something fun. Buy yourself something nice, like a new cheese grater or something. If you would like to reach out and suggest future episodes, we can be reached by email at evildonebadly@gmail.com. Or you can find us over on Instagram at evildonebadly. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you next time when we delve further into the depths of humanity on the worst true crime podcast in history. Bye-bye. And if you would really like to support the show, you can now pick up Volume 1 of the Evil Done Badly True Crime Compendium over on Amazon. It's available for free on Kindle Unlimited, and it's also available to buy via ebook or paperback. So, thanks a lot for checking it out, and thanks for listening. See you next time.